I would say we were the fortunate ones, because I started my apprenticeship in 1989. During those days, things were really good in terms of employment, in terms of training. So when people say we have 42 years of trouble, I beg to differ, because we had a very good 12 years from 1980 to 1992. Things were good. So in my view, I remove those 12 years as years of struggle or trouble, to be frank and to be fair to the government. I think we didn't have problems from 1980. Yeah. It is not fair. Coming to your question about the experiences, places like Zisco Steel, for example, Zisco Steel was known as the most important training hub. It was Zisco Steel and National Railways. Yeah. Those were the two biggest companies dealing with apprenticeship training, and the training was top-notch. So we were some of those, what I can call now, fortunate ones, who really went through the best training that was available. Yeah.
So you say the first 12 years of independence, the country was okay, you enjoyed those years. But we see a flip of the page to what we are today. And I want you to relate to that, to say, where do you think as a country we went wrong?
I think as a country, if I could quote the former President Robert Mugabe, I watched him in one of the interviews. The biggest problem we had was inexperience at independence. Okay, so I remember he said, according to him, the independence came a bit too early for them as guerrillas. They thought maybe we were going to get independent around 1981 or 1980. So when they got into office in 1980, soon after the Lancaster House Agreement, it was a bit of a shock to them. Remember, these people were in the bush, and now they must leave the guns, and immediately they must assume office in towns. Some of them were just guerrillas, they've never been in town, let alone to know the instruments of government. So he admitted that at that point, I think he was responding to the issue of why he was a proponent of this principle of reconciliation. Yeah. And why they integrated the Rhodesian army with the Zimbabwean, with the ZAPU and ZANU armies, and why they kept some of the ministers. You remember the famous Dennis Norman, the guy who was in charge of agriculture. Yeah. So the president then said we needed to incorporate these people to help us to get the required experience. Right. So from that point, we had a group of leaders meaning very well for the country, but having very little knowledge in terms of governance. Yeah. Right. So we could say they were riding on the momentum of the previous economy. So naturally, we wouldn't have any problems from 1980, apart then from the issue of the internal fights that happened, the conflict in Matabeleland. Yeah. Right. So the economy was generally all right. But as you could remember, what led to the Willowgate scandal, the first major corruption issue that erupted in the country. It was also a result of people having no experience, getting too used to the new things that they got used to now, and then started misusing. So corruption started more or less around that time, and then we had the Santura Commission, and the Willowgate claimed a number of high-profile people. You remember the Maurice Nyakumbos, up to the point of committing suicide after he was confronted by the then Prime Minister. So the turning point was, because of this inexperience, the 12 years I'm talking about, fast forward to 1991, right? By then, I was in my fourth year. I think I was in my third year. I'll tell you, I used to have my budget for the month. It was $21. When I get paid, I go to OK Bazaars, I fill up my 2 trolleys,
Yeah.
I take them home, I'm done for the month. That's how cheap life was at that stage, 1991. So I was still an apprentice by then. So even as an apprentice, you were able to feed your family, to buy everything you wanted, more or less. So then came the famous ISAP. Again, our court president, former President Mugabe, and he said, I think we were naive, meaning government, to take this recommendation from IMF, wholesome, and just moved in and started to retrench people and hoping that they are adjusting the economy is going to pick up. And then, so that sort of inexperience in terms of governance continued up to that stage.
Yeah.
Right. So from there, put that inexperience together with the context of what you call now counseling, post-trauma disorder. You need people to be counseled after going through traumatic experiences like the war, right? But you see, because there was no time, all our leaders, they never got treatment for trauma, right?
So one person now will ask, are they the rightful people to lead, or were they the rightful people to lead this country? You're speaking of the traumas of the war.
Yes.
And obviously, without the counseling, people will now, and even some of them had not even a chance to, had gone through in studies in administration, leadership.
Correct.
And they are coming straight from the bush, and they become ministers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, the war was about power, political power, although the main issue was the land, but you cannot have land without power, without political power. And everybody was excited. And if you are the governing party, even if it's your home, it doesn't matter your experience or not, you still want to govern.